When most people get their hands on $10,000, they think they have acquired spending power. I think they have acquired a test. That is the difference. The public sees $10,000 and begins asking the wrong question. What can I buy with it? A better car, a nicer vacation, a cleaner apartment, a newer phone, a watch that says something flattering to strangers, a little relief from all the years of working and waiting. I understand those impulses. I do not respect them because $10,000 in the life of an ordinary worker is not mainly a shopping event. It is the first serious allocation event. It is the first amount large enough to reveal whether you understand the difference between money that gets consumed and money that gets recruited. That is the whole game. Most people never learn it. They work. They earn. They collect a bonus, a tax refund, a small inheritance, a side hustle windfall, a severance check, a lucky year, a hard-saved pile of cash. Then they commit a financial sin so ordinary that society no longer even recognizes it as a sin. They eat the seed. That is what I want to talk about, not because $10,000 is magical. It is not magical. It is simply big enough to matter and small enough that your habits still dominate the outcome. The way you handle the first serious pool of capital in your life tells me much more about your future than your speeches ever will. If you do not know what to do with $10,000, you will not know what to do with $100,000. If you do not know what to do with $100,000, the million will only let you make more expensive mistakes. That is one of the great misunderstandings in American financial life. People think size solves confusion. Usually it magnifies it. So let me tell you the cold truth as I see it. The best way to invest $10,000 right now is not one investment. It is a hierarchy. That is the phrase I want you to keep, a hierarchy. Because capital allocation is not about finding the sexiest thing. It is about placing each dollar where it can do the most work given the actual condition of your life. And your life matters more than the market. I have spent most of my life around businesses, balance sheets, securities, entrepreneurs, salesmen, promoters, allocators, panickers, and dreamers. I have seen every kind of enthusiasm money can produce. The public loves the exciting question. What stock, what crypto, what AI trade, what moonshot, what ticker, what sector, what shortcut? What is the best way right now? The wiser question is harder. What must this money repair first before it can safely begin compounding? That is the right beginning. And for many people, the first answer is not the SP 500. It is not Bitcoin. It is not real estate. It is not an ETF. It is the hole in the boat. I have always thought ordinary investors got seduced by the glamour of investing far too early. They want to own the market before they have fixed the leak that is quietly drowning them. If you are carrying high-interest debt, then you are not yet in the investing game the way you imagine you are. You are in the repair game. That may offend some people. Good offense has educational value when it forces an honest inventory. If you owe $10,000 on a credit card at 22% interest and you also happen to have $10,000 in cash, then the best way to invest that money is not by buying the market and pretending you are a rational allocator. It is by killing the debt immediately, completely without negotiation. This is where people start making emotional objections. But the stock market averages 8 or 10% over time. Fine, but Nvidia went up more than that maybe. But what if I miss the next big move? Perhaps you will. Arithmetic still wins. If your liability is compounding against you at 20% or more, then paying it off is not surrender. It is a guaranteed return that most investors would kill to earn safely. There are not many legal risk-free, tax-free returns in the world. Eliminating vicious consumer interest is one of them. I do not need a seminar to explain this. I need a spine. The bank is not your partner. The bank is harvesting your disorder. And many people, because they want to feel like investors, insist on remaining partially disordered while trying to sound sophisticated. They buy ETFs while carrying card balances. They talk about long-term growth while financing groceries, clothes, and holidays at rates that would embarrass a loan shark from a more honest century. That is not investing. That is costume. The reason I say $10,000 is a test is that this is where your priorities become visible. You can use it to preserve the illusion that you are an investor while your balance sheet remains sick, or you can use it to restore basic structural strength. I know which one I would choose always, and I would choose it without romance. The public thinks debt repayment is boring because it does not create a fun story. No one wants to hear that the first great investment move in your life might be deleting a balance and receiving no applause. But finance is not a movie. It is a machine. Machines improve when the friction is reduced. A credit card charging 24% is friction of the ugliest kind. Kill it. Now, let us say you have done that, or let us say, more fortunate, that you have no such debt at all. Now the hierarchy moves to the second level, and here again most people are eager to skip what matters because what matters looks too dull to flatter them. Liquidity. The cash buffer. The emergency reserve. I have long said that cash is a poor long-term investment. I still believe that, but I have never believed that cash is useless. Cash is not there to make you rich. Cash is there to keep you from becoming stupid at the wrong time. That is a very different job, and it is one of the most important jobs money can perform. If you take your last $10,000 and dump it into stocks while you have no true cushion, then you are not investing cleanly. You are placing your future at the mercy of the next broken transmission, medical bill, job loss, rent spike, or family emergency. That is not courage. It is fragility pretending to be boldness. This is where the young and eager usually object. They say cash loses to inflation. They say idle cash is wasted. They say the market rewards those who get in early. There is truth in all of that, but truth without sequence is one of the most dangerous things in finance. Yes, inflation eats cash. So does desperation, and desperation usually eats much more. I would much rather accept a little inflation drag on a proper emergency fund than force myself to become a seller of assets at precisely the wrong time because I built no shield at all. This is another place where the public confuses purity with strength. The all-investor with no liquidity looks bold. The quietly liquid investor looks timid until life happens. Then the liquid investor becomes powerful. That is what I want you to see. The market will give you many chances to buy productive assets over the course of your life. It will not be especially sympathetic if you are forced to sell them at a bad moment because you refuse to hold 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a proper high-yield savings account or money market fund. I do not keep cash because I love cash. I keep cash because I love optionality. Optionality is one of the most undervalued assets in the world. The person with reserves can wait. The person without reserves must react. That distinction alone determines an astonishing amount of wealth. So if you have $10,000 and no emergency buffer, then part of that money is not for investing in the glamorous sense either. It is for building the fortress that lets you invest intelligently later. Again, this sounds too plain for many people. Too bad. Plain arithmetic is where real fortunes begin. Now let us say the debt is dead and the reserve exists. Only now, in my mind, have you earned the right to enter the market with seriousness. And here the public usually commits a different kind of mistake. It thinks now is the moment for brilliance. It is not. It is the moment for humility. This is where many intelligent people go broke or, more commonly, merely underperform their own possibilities for decades. They get a little capital, then immediately begin fantasizing about their uniqueness. They do not want to own the market. They want to outwit it. They want to buy the next Apple before it was Apple, the next Nvidia before it was obvious, the next 10-bagger before the crowd notices. That desire is understandable. It is also one of the costliest fantasies ever sold to ordinary people. I have said for a long time that broad, low, cost ownership of productive American enterprise is one of the most powerful tools ever made available to the ordinary saver. Why? Because it allows you to benefit from the ingenuity, scale, profit, and resilience of hundreds of major companies without having to pretend you know which specific one will be the hero of the next decade. That is not laziness. That is respect for the difficulty of stock. Picking respect for diversification, respect for low fees, and respect for the fact that most professionals with armies of analysts do not reliably beat the market after costs over long stretches. You may not enjoy hearing that. You should still hear it. If the core of your first investment plan is speculation, your first investment plan is not a plan. It is a personality test. And most personalities are too impulsive for concentrated speculation to end well. That is why I love boring compounds. Boring survives. Boring leaves you with enough capital and emotional stability to do smarter things later. The broad market index is not a confession of mediocrity. It is an admission that capitalism itself is a magnificent machine, and that you do not need to be the smartest operator in the room to benefit from it. That is a profoundly liberating idea. You do not need a Bloomberg terminal. You do not need a cousin who knows a guy. You do not need to memorize 12 product launches and guess which management team will tell the prettiest story next quarter. You need low fees, broad exposure, and the patience not to interrupt compounding because the news felt dramatic on a Wednesday afternoon. That is all. The person who can do that for 20 years will often embarrass people who spent those same 20 years trying to sound more sophisticated. Now, I know many people want more than one line item in life. They want a little cash flow, they want something tangible, they want to feel the money sending something back. I understand that there's nothing wrong with appreciating dividends, and I have always admired businesses that can distribute cash to owners while still growing. But here again, sequence matters. Dividends are not a religion. They are a feature of some good businesses and some mediocre ones. I do not want yield for yield's sake. I want durable cash generation from high quality enterprises purchased at reasonable prices. If someone with $10,000 has already handled the first two levels of the hierarchy and has begun building the core through a broad index, then yes, I can understand carving a smaller portion towards strong dividend, paying businesses, or a sensible dividend. ETF cash flow has psychological value. It teaches the owner that capital can send back income, not just fluctuate on a screen. That lesson is useful, but I would still say the same thing. The core must be broad and strong before the satellite gets clever. That is another rule that saves people from themselves. The public loves the satellite, the rich protect the core. Now let me address the seductive fifth thing, because no conversation about $10,000 in the current era is complete without somebody demanding permission to speculate. What about crypto? What about that one AI stock? What about the biotech with a huge upside? What about the startup my friend is launching? This is where I think many people need a strict rule to protect them from their own appetite. I am not opposed to speculation. I am opposed to undisciplined speculation financed by self-deception. If you must speculate, fence it, constrain it, name it, a small slice of capital, money you can afford to have look foolish without destabilizing the machine, can be deployed into high-risk, high uncertainty ideas if that satisfies your desire to participate in the more theatrical corners of finance. But that slice must remain small enough that failure does not injure your future. This is why I like hard percentage limits. 5%, maybe 10 for a person with extraordinary temperament and unusual knowledge, but 5 is kinder to most people. Why so strict? Because people do not lose fortunes on speculation one tiny bet at a time. They lose fortunes when a tiny bet becomes identity, then conviction, then concentration, then denial. By the time they are done, what started as a playful sidecar became the vehicle itself. That is how ruin often sounds in the early stages. It sounds like enthusiasm. So yes, if you want to buy a little Bitcoin, a little speculative technology, a small special situation, fine. But understand the role you are going to the casino with a tiny controlled amount of capital after the fortress is built and the main engine is already humming. You are not building your house in the casino. That is another distinction people would do well to learn much earlier than they usually do. Now let us come to timing, because this is where many people with a basically sound plan still manage to bruise themselves unnecessarily. If you have investable money after the first levels of the hierarchy are handled, should you put it all in at once? The public wants certainty here too. I have always found that amusing human beings want a guaranteed answer on when to enter a market whose greatest strength is precisely that no one can reliably choreograph it for you on command. I do not pretend to know whether the market will be higher or lower next Tuesday. Neither do you. Neither does the television panel. That does not trouble me. It simply means you need a method that respects uncertainty instead of pretending to conquer it. Dollar cost averaging is not the highest expected return strategy in every historical window, but it is often the highest survivability strategy for nervous new investors deploying meaningful capital for the first time. Why? Because it reduces regret. It removes the need to turn one single day into a verdict on your intelligence. It creates a schedule. It lets you buy some now, some later, and more if prices fall. It helps temperament. Temperament matters. If you are emotionally built to invest a lump sum and never look back, fine. Many people are not. Many people who say they are brave become much less brave the first time their new money is down 10% a week after they invested it. That is why a 6-month deployment plan for the investable portion of a first $10,000 can be perfectly sensible. It turns a scary all-at-once commitment into a process, and process beats adrenaline over long stretches. I want to say something else here because it is very important. $10,000 is not supposed to make you rich tomorrow. That misunderstanding ruins more beginnings than bad math does. People keep expecting the first pile of capital to do the emotional work of a fortune. They want it to transform their life visibly and rapidly so they can finally feel that things are happening. It does not work that way. $10,000 is not the finish line. It is proof that the machine has begun. If you treat it like a finish line, you will overspend it, overconcentrate it, or overexpect from it. If you treat it like a seed, your behavior changes instantly. You do not eat the seed. You plant it, you protect it, you water it. You stop digging it up every week to see if the roots are deeper. That is what patience actually means in money. It means respecting early capital enough not to force it to perform theatrically before it has time to become meaningful. This is why I think the true value of the first 10,000 is not merely the potential return it earns. It is the identity it creates, a person with debt killed, reserves built, and capital deployed into productive ownership is no longer merely hoping to become financially secure. One day he has begun. That is a major transition, and transitions matter more than people think. Once you become the kind of person who routes cash through a serious hierarchy instead of through emotion, every future raise, bonus, refund, inheritance, and opportunity begins landing in a different system. That is how fortunes are really built, not from one lucky investment, from repeated sane allocations. That is why I care about this subject so much. The habits you form with $10,000 do not stay attached only to $10,000. They become the pattern by which you handle the next 50, the next 100, the next million. If the pattern is clean, you have a chance. If the pattern is emotional, even much larger sums will get wasted. Now let me compress the hierarchy as clearly as I know how. First, kill high-interest consumer debt. Anything above roughly 7 or 8% deserves suspicion, and anything in the credit. Card range deserves aggression. Do not invest while that fire is alive and call yourself clever. Second, build a shield. 3 to 6 months of real expenses in a place that is liquid, boring, and paying something decent. Third, begin broad ownership. Low-cost index funds are not glamorous. They are one of the most civilized wealth-building inventions available to ordinary people. Fourth, add selective cash. Flowing assets if you understand them, and if the core is already intact. Fifth, keep speculation fenced so tightly that failure teaches you without wounding you. Sixth, deploy with a process you can actually live through. Not because a process is elegant, but because elegance that collapses under your own psychology is worthless. And seventh, understand that the real goal is not to feel rich. The real goal is to become structurally stronger. That is what money is for. It is not for proving taste. It is not for buying relief from boredom. It is not for trading tomorrow. S freedom for today. S visibility. It is for building a machine that gradually asks less and less of your labor in order to preserve your life. That is the dream, not luxury, not applause, not optics. A machine $10,000 is enough to begin building one. It is also enough to reveal whether you have any business touching $1 million later. That is why I would take it seriously. Very seriously, because the world is full of people who think the first serious sum of money should finally allow them to consume like the successful. The wiser move is almost always the opposite. The first serious sum of money should be the moment you start acting like an allocator. That is how the future begins changing, quietly, before anybody else can see it, before even you can fully feel it. That is the best way to invest $10,000 right now. Not in one ticker, in the right order.